turn the floor over to our City Attorney, Rob Wilmot. The first item of business are public hearings, and then we will go into the special called meeting. So, Rob, I'll turn it over to you.
The first thing I'd like to do, we have 4 public hearings on the calendar tonight. They're kind of the void properties of the Carrington properties. The Carrington properties are not going to be heard tonight. There's been some issues that came up, waiting for some resubmissions by Delline in order to relook at that application. In the event the application does come back before council, there'll be another notice that comes out and another public hearing will be held on that issue should that application come before the council again. But we are going to move forward with the public hearing. This is application number, I'm going to take these both together. Application PP21-0037. It's submitted by Beltline Energy LLC. It's requesting annexation of 96.317 acres located at 197 Carrington Drexel Road. And application PP21-0038, also submitted by Beltline Energy, requesting the rezone of property located there on Carrington Drexel Road from county residential R1 to suburban agricultural with conditions upon annexation. First thing I'd like to do is ask City Council, conflict of interest. Have any of these applicants or opponents to the application contributed at least $250 to any of the campaigns for election during the past 2 years?
No.
No.
Do you or any members of your family have a property interest that will be affected by the proposed rezoning or reclassification of the property, whether it is a positive or negative impact?
No.
No.
Do you or any members of your family have a financial interest in any business entity that has a property interest in any real property that will be affected by the proposed rezoning or reclassification of the property, whether it is a positive or negative impact?
No.
No.
Prior to taking any public comment, I'm going to ask Crystal Gilliard. She come up and just basically describe for the council and the public what the proposed annexation and rezoning constitutes.
Sure. It's okay if I remove my mask so I can talk clearly.
Please.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we're going to be discussing the Boyd property tonight, and we came before you about a month ago. So I'll try to, hit the high points so we don't, so I don't repeat myself too much. But to recap, this is map and parcel number 0057060 and 0057060A. The 2 parcels are located on Carrington Drexler Road, and the total acreage is 96.317. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on August 9th, 2021, just a couple weeks ago, and I'll hit the high points from that meeting. Several members of the public spoke in opposition to the annexation and rezoning. I have a complete list with me here if any of you all would like to see it, or I can read off all of their names. And Ryan Sanders spoke in favor of the application. So application PP210037 was to annex 2 tracts of land. The acreage is off. I'm so sorry about that. But it's 2 tracts of land totaling 96.317 acres. A motion was made by Mr. Solomon Nixon to approve the annexation, and Julie Sharp seconded the motion. Ms. Julie Lester voted against the motion. 3 members were there that night. PP210038 was to rezone that tract of land. The voting was exactly the same as the annexation. Mr. Solomon Nixon made the motion, Ms. Julie Sharp seconded the motion, and Ms. Julie Lester voted against the motion. So on the screen, you'll see the tract that is to be voted on tonight of annexation and rezoning. This is the Boyd tract. This includes a small 2-acre cutout in the total acreage of 96.317. So one of the first things that we do when we get an annexation application at our office is we do a little of the kind of checklist items. You can't annex a property into the city limits if it's not contiguous to the city. So that's the very first check that we do to see if an application can even move forward. So as you'll see on this map, I've identified the city limits line right there. You can see that this tract is contiguous to the city. All right, from there, we look to see what the requested rezoning is. This parcel would be going from County R1 to City Suburban Agriculture. And so a rule on rezoning is if the requested rezoning should be also contiguous to a parcel that has that rezoning, or else it's considered spot zoning. So as you can see on this parcel right here, at the bottom lower half that's below Carrington Drexel Road, this parcel is contiguous to a suburban agricultural zoning tract. So it meets those two checks. All right, so the next thing that we do is we look for consistency with the comprehensive plan. This is a really important step that we go through in our office, and this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The stakeholders, when they were developing the comprehensive plan, they saw the future land use of this area go in residential. That's identified by the turquoise color on the screen up there. Suburban agricultural has a residential component to it that we'll get in later in the conditions on this zoning action, but with there being the allowance for residences on suburban agriculture, I do consider this to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Next, you'll see the solar array for this tract. So again, this is a 96-acre tract. The solar array planned for this development spans about 18 to 20 acres. And next we have the conditions. So in consulting with the Planning and Zoning Commission, we've been to City Council once, and working with city staff and the city attorney, these are the conditions that seemed fitting for this development. In the event any portion of the tract of land is used for residential purposes, the following requirements shall apply. No manufactured homes shall be permitted on the property, and lots must have a minimum size of 20,000 square feet with a minimum lot width of 100 feet, a minimum lot depth of 200 feet, and minimum road frontage of 100 feet. The gross floor area per dwelling must be a minimum of 2,000 square feet and the maximum height of 40 feet, with the setbacks of 30 feet, 10 feet, and 30 feet for front, side, and rear. 2, the solar farm array which will be situate upon the tract of land shall adhere and comply with the following requirements. A, the location and size of the solar farm array shall be as depicted on Exhibit B, incorporated into this ordinance by reference thereto, and shall not exceed the area as depicted on Exhibit B. So, as you'll recall, the slide 3 slides ago that showed the solar array, that is the maximum size that the solar farm could be. It can't exceed, I think it's between 18 and 20 acres is how it's laid out right there. So it cannot, you know, in 2 years, the solar farm business be doing really, really well, and they say, oh, okay, let's take this from 18 acres to 96.317 acres. That's not permissible. It can only be as this approved layout if this passes City Council tonight. B, a 10-foot buffer shall be maintained on the outer perimeter of the fencing and shall be landscaped. Landscaping shall include a shrub or hedgerow, which will attain a minimum height of 6 feet. At the time of installation, the plants shall be a minimum distance of 8 feet apart, utilizing 1-gallon containers, and shall be installed on the outer perimeter of the fencing with the buffer area. A landscaping plan shall be presented and approved by the Department of Community Development at the time of permitting. 2C. Any clearing of natural vegetation shall be limited to that which is necessary for the construction, operation, and maintenance of the ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation and consistent with best practices for the preservation of natural areas or good husbandry of the land or forest. D, the solar farm shall be fenced in using a chain-link fence with a height of at least 6 feet. Brightly colored signs no smaller than 1 feet by 2 feet shall be posted on the fence every 100 feet, warning of the danger and high voltage. A sign containing the names of the facility owners and operators and their addresses and telephone numbers shall be posted on the fence at the entry of the solar farm. And E, the last condition, decommissioning. Unless otherwise approved by the City of Tifton, decommissioning shall begin no later than 12 months after the solar panels cease to generate electricity or thermal energy. A decommissioning plan will be required at the time of permitting. And I want to go over this just one more time for you, since we're only hearing the Boyd tract tonight and not the Carrington tract. I thought it would be a good opportunity to review the financial gain to the City of Tifton. So the total gain to the City of Tifton for the Boyd tract over the 40-year period is $112,238. Divide that by 40, and you get $2,805.95 per year in tax revenue for 96.317 acres. So just wanted to go back over that with you so that we had all the information. That's all I have, Rob. Thank you. Yes, yes, yes.
Can I ask a quick question to you, Crystal? I want to clarify this acreage, since seem to have a problem before. What we've got here on the agenda, it says 96.317 acres and 2 acres located at 197. So is it 96.317 and 2?
No, what happened, when the applicant gave us the legal description, they basically included the road, which had been conveyed out to the DOT. So we had to subtract out the road when we came to the final ordinance. So that's what got you to the 96.317 rather than 98, because they included the road. So we had to take the road out of that to get us the correct acreage of 96.317. So 96.317 is the total amount of acreage that's being annexed.
It includes the 2-acre parcel, so that when the applicant did the legal description with his legal team, it was found that the 2 acres are actually included in the 96.317.
So instead of the word "and," it should say "including." You look at the agenda.
Yeah.
It should say "including."
I know what the agenda says now, Jack. What we did, once we got all our numbers correct, we've redone the ordinance. The ordinance has the correct number of 96.317, and that's what we just announced, that that's the amount that we're annexing. So that's 96.317 is the amount of acreage that we are annexing.
And we sat down with county staff and
Everybody agreed. Okay.
I'm sorry? That's right, the total amount is 96.317.
No, it says the agenda is not correct. After all of that, I still maintain that the agenda is not correct, or I'm not hearing it right. If you read what the agenda says, the agenda says 96.317 and 2 acres.
I understand.
Now, I just heard it's 96.317 including.
That
2
was
acres.
to be consistent with the advertisements, so to be consistent with those advertisements, that's what this says. But this was, discovered late last week, so Rob has included it in the ordinance as.
Okay. As long as we're clear, 96.317.
96.317. Thank you, Crystal. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Ryan Sanders with Beltline, if you want to come up, and I believe he's the agent for the applicant, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. As Mr. Wilmot said, my name is Ryan Sanders with Beltline Energy. I'm here to speak in favor of this annexation and rezoning request. May I take this down? Or, if it's better, I'm happy to leave it up. Okay. So, a couple things. We've been at this for a while, over a year now. We've been working with P&Z staff, city attorney. They've been tremendous throughout. We have over the year-long process, we've developed what I believe is a very robust and thoughtful city ordinance that would be levied when we brought these acres into the city. The proposed ordinance as drafted by Mr. Wilmot is comprehensive. It regulates the solar farm thoroughly and appropriately. It also allows for, we have a maximum 20-acre solar farm, but it also allows for the entire 96.317 acres to be brought into the city, which does two things. It facilitates the immediate investment of the solar farm. It also allows the city of Tifton to grow in a healthy manner. You're growing up Clyde Drexler Road towards the Brighton Road exit. You're expanding the city in an area that is conducive to additional development in the future, perhaps even in the near future. And one thing I wanted to mention, the revenue numbers that Mrs. Gaillard presented to you were just a little bit off. That's $146,000 in total revenue to the city of Tifton, outside and above the county of Tifton, or the county of Tift. Crystal was mentioning solely the ad valorem taxes on the equipment. You have to also add in the land. When we bring the land into the city, we will bring the 20 acres underneath the solar farm out of the CUVA covenant, and they'll be taxed at full fair market value along with the additional investment of the equipment. Of note, when we bring in this 96 acres, it'll all be rezoned according to the ordinance drafted by Mr. Wilmot that is positioned it for one residential home for every 20,000 square feet. Meaning you're bringing in 96 acres to host a 20-acre solar farm. You're equipping the city of Tifton with 76.317 additional acres that are prime and zoned for residential development that should lead to additional investment within the city. So the 20 acres are creating $146,000 in revenue, but they're creating the potential for far, far more acres, because when these acres come into the city, they're going to be zoned ready for 2 houses per every 1 acre in residential development, should the landowner choose to go that direction. So we feel like there's actual direct impact in ad valorem taxes, but there's also a potential impact for bringing this into the city and growing the city in a healthy area, in a healthy direction. Additionally, by bringing in the 96 acres, you're expanding the city along that Clyde Drexler Road up towards that Brighton Road exit. There's potential for further annexations in the future that might allow the city of Tifton to have a presence around that Brighton Road off-ramp on Highway 75, which would be significantly valuable to the city. So with that said, the elephant in the room here is that we know we have opposition, and the opposition arrived at the P&Z hearing earlier this month, and it's our distinct hope, and every time we come to these public hearings, we always welcome public input into our plan. We want to get it right, and so when we hear public opposition, if there's constructive feedback that we can receive and build into our plan to improve things, we're happy to do so. And the last hearing, it was a lengthy affair. The Planning and Zoning, for the second time, approved both of our annexation requests and both of our rezoning requests. And my takeaway from that hearing was that there's a lot of interest in this, and we had hoped that the meeting would be more constructive, where there might be some back and forth where we can improve our project so it's a better fit within the community, as opposed to just the blanket opposition. But in any event, it's interesting. I've had the opportunity to speak with our client, the landowners, and I know they've spoken with the Drexlers. And it strikes us that the two families involved here perhaps have more in common than separate. I know that the Drexlers just put their home place into pine trees because they want to preserve the property for future generations. Well, same thing's going on here. This solar farm allows an additional revenue stream that helps the landowner keep the property in the family and to her directed heir. So I think the motivations are the same. I think this is very healthy in the short term, in the immediate investment to the city of Tifton. It also positions the city of Tifton to grow in a very valuable direction, and the remaining acres that are left over have a significant amount of potential value. So with that said, we have our pens out And we're happy to participate in this hearing, and we hope that when we walk out of here, our plan is improved. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Is anyone else here that would like to speak in favor of the application? Ms. Kersey, you know, we're just talking about the Boyd property tonight.
Oh, well, then I probably, well, I've had a conversation with her, and so I might have just a few words that, excuse me. I did have a conversation with Norma Boyd.
Lisa, if you don't mind, if you just state your name and your address.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm Lisa Carrington Meadows, and I live at 2606 Wilson Avenue, Tifton. And I'm sorry to back up. I know that we're only discussing that one part, but I've had several conversations with Norma Boyd. And again, as Ryan has pointed out, and as we have discussed probably over these last couple of months, and Ryan's heard it for, I guess he said we've been working with the city for over a year, but this project has probably got about 2 years behind it. And the underlying part of this, as Ryan discussed, it's an opportunity to preserve something for our family. I know change is very difficult. Change is very challenging, especially in a community where the establishment of that community is based on generational issues. So we're aware of some of the feelings that are out there. Norma Boyd, my family, we believe this to be an opportunity to create something that maintains a future generational issue that also benefits this community, as it has in the past. And so that's just about it that I need to say today.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of this application, of these applications? If I can get a show of hands, who's here that would like to speak in opposition to the application? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mayor, we've got about 6 folks that like to speak in opposition. I didn't know, we certainly can place time limits on that at, no less than 10 minutes. I didn't know how you wanted to proceed, if you just want to let each one in, come up and have their say, or did you want to put any time limits on how you want to proceed?
If, with the council's approval, why don't we limit, unless the collective group would like to select one spokesperson, which could maybe have a 10 or 15 minute period, or if we would like to allow, if everyone would like to speak, maybe limit to 5 minutes. If we've got 6 people, that will give us 30 minutes to hear from them. So
5 minutes each.
is that agreeable with the council? Are you comfortable with that?
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
let's do that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
All right, so if you would, when you come to the podium to speak in opposition, if you just state your name and your address, and then you'll be given 5 minutes in order to address the council. So first one, whoever would like to come up first.
We do have a list here for you, sir.
I'm sorry?
So we do have a list here of names for you.
Okay. Jessica, this is gonna need to go. in the
So, good
minutes.
evening. I am Mike Drexler. I live at 321 Brantley Ridge, Warner Robins, Georgia, 31088. I'm the son of Wileen Drexler, who owns the property at 256 Carrington Drexler Road. Tonight, I will look to demonstrate multiple points to surrender to this committee for consideration to vote no on the annexation of the Carrington Farms and the Boyd properties. So obviously for us, we thought both measures would go forward, so I will speak to that tonight. As well as the rezoning properties such that Beltline Solar would then be allowed to set up 2 different properties containing solar facilities adjacent to the other properties not consistent with the proposed use. First point, Beltline Energy is a poor developer of solar facilities as well as maintainer of facilities and not an organization fit to do business in the city of Tifton nor Tift County. Beltline Energy failed to execute its duties in accordance with documented procedures and notifying adjacent landowners prior to the original Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. There is no long-term data that future use of the property would not be negatively impacted by the on land values. Current use of the property has economic value under the current zoning, and under potential future use of the property, there are many other options that provide for similar or better options other than photovoltaic systems. Number 5, the proposed use of the land is not consistent with other nearby properties. Property zoned suburban agriculture or agricultural use are currently used in the preferred manner consistent with zoning. Solar panels are not as green as they are purported. They are full of dangerous, carcinogenic, water-soluble, heavy metals, predominantly cadmium and lead, within the panels that can leach into the surrounding soil and water supply if damaged. Tornadoes, hailstorms, and high winds associated with the hurricanes and tropical storms that we frequently have here propose a real risk to the environment. Additionally, there is difficulty in recycling the panels, as it is more economically viable to mine and procure new raw materials. Areas are already beginning to ban the dumping of panels in landfills. If companies out there are to recycle, the regulations are such that it becomes very expensive for these companies to recycle it, or the regulations are not followed to the letter, causing other issues. Number 7, evolution of fusion technology will make solar a much less viable supply option in the near future, damaging the economic viability of the panels and the potential for abandonment by Beltline. And then lastly, designation of the Boyd property is in the conservation use program, in my opinion, precluding some of these proceedings. So questions on the application to rezone. Some things that I noted, and the reason why I would bring these up is that it appears to me that section C, question 4, was inaccurately answered, as well as question 5. Question 7 was also inaccurately answered. There is only one property adjacent to the property zoned SA1. All other properties are zoned differently. Section C, question 9, does not provide for any long-term employment of citizens of Tifton. Because there are no employees, the potential for the property to fall into disarray is at a high level, as demonstrated on the property owned by George Randall Carr. Property was until recently overgrown with weeds. If the property is managed in similar fashion, it would not allow for the company to meet the obligation to Georgia Power for power generation, among other issues. Question 10, the Drexler property has pine timber located on its property that will go through cycles in which it is necessary to perform control burns. The commercialization use of solar panels in nearby presents a greater risk to limiting the necessary tasks related to timber farming. Additionally, from an economic standpoint, pine trees provide an excellent use of the property for money to be made on straw and timber. Other types of nut tree farming, as well as ornamental shrub and tree production, are beneficial if row crop farming is not satisfactory income producing. Section 2, public notice. Letters were never submitted to the adjacent landowners per documented procedure prior to the first Planning and Zoning Committee. Preferred use for the land is agricultural as defined in Appendix A, Section 20102. I will not go through that this evening to bore you with the details, but the bottom line is that from a permissible standpoint, the photovoltaic cells are permissible on this property if it is such designated from a zoning standpoint. However, I would suggest to you that it is not with what is set forth in the zoning. It says the purpose of this district is to permit low-density agricultural uses in those areas in which the city has yet to extend urban services and encourage development for needed urban expansion. The environmental impact, other burgeoning technologies, fusion that will damage the future viability of large solar systems. Articles provided to the commission that I sent to you guys last night, as well as the mayor, provide for the potential negative impact of solar farms. The articles include information regarding soil and water contamination potential due to the release of the heavy metals, which could contaminate the water source from public wells. The adjacent water tower.
I'm sorry, I need to stop you.
That's fine. I understand.
So, thank you very much, and Rob, I'll turn it back over to you to
Okay.
call on our next.
Who else would like to speak in opposition? Yeah, would you just state your name and address for council, please?
Before we start the time, could I pass this out to everybody? I just have a copy for everybody here.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Would you give our clerk a copy, please?
I've got a question of the council. Did you all get an email from Mr. Drexler? Mr. Drexler, I don't think, where'd you go? There, oh, no, I did not receive an email.
Okay, I'll go back and make sure that I
Okay, all right,
send it to you guys.
okay. That's what I was asking if the other council members did. My email is a little different than theirs. Mine is my full name, because we had another J.
I just pulled it straight off the website.
Okay, that would be correct then. So, okay.
I didn't get back any information that had been undeliverable, but
Sometimes if there's a lot of attachments, our city filters may kick it out or something. I don't know, Stephen, is there a way to get that email to us? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry.
Jessica, can I see that, please?
Would you like a copy, sir?
Yeah, that'd be great, thanks.
I have a few more. Would anybody else like a copy?
No, that's okay.
You're welcome. Good evening. My name is Dustin Griffin. I reside at 4165 Georgia Highway 125 North in Tifton. Our property is on the eastern side of the Carrington Farms and adjacent to that property. I understand that we're speaking on the Boyd property tonight. I am opposed to the rezoning, and I have a few points I'd like to bring up tonight.
Mr. Griffin, if you would.
Yes, sir.
You have handed council some documents.
Yes, sir.
If you just would, just briefly tell us what these documents are.
Yes, sir. We're going to go through the documents, have it in order so we can follow along, just so everybody can look at what I'm talking about
That's
tonight.
fine, thank you, sir.
So starting on the first page of the document, I have here the application, section 2 of the public notice. It is in our opinion, that we feel that Mr. Sanders failed to follow the proper procedure when submitting the application. Myself nor any of the other homeowners received a notification, and it states in section 2, notice must be provided to all individuals. Letters to all adjoining properties shall be mailed no less than 15 days prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, first-class mail. That's for application and/or amendments, which has both happened. If the application is not completed, the application shall be deemed out of order and the application will not proceed. I feel that in this situation, that's what should happen. Below that, you can see where he has a list of all of our names, addresses, and contact information. So moving on, I'd like to talk about warranties. I feel like a great proposal has been submitted, and a little bit about myself. I work in the solar industry myself. I have solar on my home. I'm 100% pro solar for a residential property. When it comes to a farm, I'm 100% opposed for multiple reasons. Warranties. And there's 2 packets. In the back packet, you'll notice I've provided a copy of all the warranties for the equipment that Mr. Sanders has submitted forward. In the front packet, I want to talk about the racking systems. In all the warranties he submitted for this proposal for a 30 to 40-year farm, the best warranty is a 12-year warranty. There are linear warranties, which is on the product itself, on the production itself, but not the product. All labor and all manufacturer warranties do not go any further than 12-year. In this packet, he did not state which type of racking system as far as manufacturer. He did state that they were going to use an HSAT, which is a horizontal single access tracker. It's a tracker system. It follows the sun. Because he didn't tell me what manufacturer, I proceeded to print out a copy of all tracking systems to show you that their warranties range anywhere from 5 years to 10 years. If you follow on a few pages behind that, you'll notice in Butler, Georgia, there's a large 1.3 megawatt farm in Butler, Georgia. That farm was commissioned in 2016, which is 5 years ago. If you'll notice in the photos behind that, that is their current tracking system. The tracker, which is also an HSAT system, the warranties have expired. That is what their current farm looks like 5 years after it's been commissioned to the public. From somebody who lives right adjacent to that property, the last thing that I want to see is this farm in 5 years, 12 years. My question would be, who's going to take on the burden of the expense when all of these manufacturing and labor warranties are gone? Mr. Sanders has his contract signed. Georgia Power's made their money. The city's got their taxes paid to them a little bit. Who's going to take on the financial burden to call in and pay for the maintenance, the repairs, and or replacement of the products needed to do such a thing? Is that going to come on us as taxpayers? Who's going to bite that bill if the landowners can't? Because it's going to be their responsibility. Lastly, and I didn't provide a copy to this, but I'll be more than happy to after the meeting, my question would be, who is going to pay for the disposal of this property? Currently, as today's market, the cost to dispose of a panel is $2 per panel in the landfill, if the landfill allows it. To dispose of that property or the panel for that panel to be recycled is $15 per panel. On the Boyd Farm, the proposal is 10,692 panels. On the Carrington Farm is 11,518 panels. I broke this down on a 2% inflation rate. At $2 per panel, in 30 years, the total cost would be $37,974 to dispose of the Boyd solar panels in the landfill. In 40 years for the Boyd Farm, that would be $46,290. If we were to choose to recycle that, if the landfill did not allow that expense, recycling at $15 per panel, in 30 years at a 2% inflation rate, it would cost the city and or the landowner $284,809 to dispose of those panels. In a 40-year contract at a 2% inflation rate, it would cost the city and or the landowner $347,181 to dispose of those panels. If the landowner can't afford that, how are we know, as citizens around it, how do we know that's going to be taken care of, that expense is going to be taken care of? And I'll close with this. All of you sitting on that board tonight, how many of you would want to look out your back door and see this in your backyard? This is in my backyard. I bought that property for my family to raise my 2 kids and to have a piece of wildlife, to have a piece of the country, and to raise my kids the way I was raised. This is in my backyard. How many of you would want to look out your back window every day and see this in your backyard? And that's coming from somebody who has solar on their house and is in the solar industry and has read over 200 solar contracts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else like to speak in opposition to the application?
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
Again, sir, if you just state your name and where you live, please, sir.
My name's Stephen Drexler. I live at 1904 Indian Hill Road, Vestavia Hills, Alabama. First of all, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I own property adjacent to my cousin Mike, who spoke, was first to speak. Inherited property from my father through my grandfather. Been in the family for over 4 generations. So I do have an interest in what the city council is proposed to vote on tonight. I understand progress. I know the need for cities to generate money for government services and provide the best quality of life for its citizens. It is natural for cities to expand their borders and take in areas to fulfill current and or future plans. Good gosh, I grew up in Orlando. I was in Orlando before Disney. And I have firsthand knowledge of what expansion looks like if it's done smartly. However, I do not see the value in this proposal by the city of Tifton to rezone this property. I'm not against taking it into the city, that's fine. If the property owners want to become part of the city, I'm all for that. I do not see the value in the proposal of this rezoning the property, construct such an eyesore as this solar facility, and limit the use of this property for 40 years. 40 years. The only positive thing I can identify is an increase in the city's tax revenue and put some money into the pockets of a select few. In the large scope of things, the revenue is minimal and the city receives nothing else. I'm opposed to this proposal for the following reasons. Once constructed, the property, like I said, is frozen. Nothing can be done with that property for 40 years. There's no chance for reevaluation, renovation, or expansion to adjacent properties. Who wants to live or work near a solar facility? It's not the best use of the property. That's one of the questions in the application. When I-75 was in the planning stages, a state senator from Tift County negotiated for Tift County to have 6 exits off the interstate. That was unheard of at that time for a small county like Tifton to have 6 exits off the interstate. Why did he do that? Well, it was his vision that, as with other road projects, growth will be much enhanced, property values will increase over time, and it would be an asset to the future development of Tifton. Again, this project strips that vision completely off the planning pages. I also noticed in the application that, as it said before, that it's zoned R1. And the houses that are zoned for out there are not going to be nice houses, 2,000 square foot minimum, nice property lines, good gosh, the way houses are being built now right next to each other. This is going to be a desirable area, but not with a solar farm. Year-to-year tax revenue. Are you going to generate any revenue for the city off the construction? Probably not a penny. The construction crews will be from out of state. Materials made or bought in Tifton? I don't think so. In Georgia? No. Or the United States? I don't think any of those materials are going to be purchased or produced here in the United States. The tax base, it's frozen. Again, by freezing the land, you freeze the tax base. As opposed to a tax base expansion with commercial, retail, and housing development, which produces jobs. What are the possibilities? If this proposal is approved, no one will know for 40 years. Once constructed, the projects will employ no one. No tax generated from any employees of this proposal. No associated businesses or supporting jobs are also going to be created. The unknown liability of the city, we've already talked about that, but the future of the value of solar energy is unknown. The possibility or probability of natural disasters and environmental effects must be considered because of well water and land contamination. If in the future solar is outdated or obsolete, how will this facility be of any value to anyone? And more importantly, if the developer goes belly up, who's responsible? Is that my time? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drexler. Yes, sir. If you would just state your name and where you live, please, sir.
My name's Brandon Holly. I live at 321 Carrington Drexler Road. It's adjacent to the Carrington property, but I mean, all this kind of applies. The Boyd property's just down the street from where I live. We shouldn't really be even talking about this at the moment. As Dustin said earlier, we were not notified by Beltline Energy as they were supposed to. It's in the minutes. He admitted it, that they didn't even notify us. So we were not at the first P&Z meeting, but all 14 of us, when the city sent out letters, showed up in strong opposition. We're talking about agriculture. They want to zone this suburban agriculture. And yes, rubber stamping it, it fits. But solar energy is no different than hydroelectric energy. And do you call hydroelectric energy farming? They've come down here under the guise that they're going to do the city a favor. They're going to generate the city $29 an acre in taxes off the numbers that he gives. $29 an acre. If this was to remain residential, be annexed and become housing, which the city desperately needs, city taxes on each property would be $1,500 to $2,000 a home. That would really benefit the city. City services could be used and enhanced. I mean, police, fire, EMS, whatever. A lot better use. The only people this is going to benefit is Beltline Energy. When they get through with their contract and they sell it to Duke, they're going to take their money and they're going to run. Duke Energy is going to make their money. The money's going to go to North Carolina. North Carolina's going to receive the tax burden on that. They're going to get the taxes off the revenue they generate from when they're selling the energy from 4 cents that they generated at to 12 cents to Georgia Power. So 8 cents a watt, they're going to make their power on it, and the money's going to go to North Carolina. The city of Tifton, the state of Georgia, nobody's going to receive any tax revenue off of it. No one's going to be employed by it. If we're planning for the future, we should be planning for homes. The city's growing. I knew when I moved there that one day I'd probably be in the city limits. Heck, I live less than 3/8 of a mile from a fire department that's in the city. So I accepted that. I assumed one day it'd be residential. I understand people want to keep the property in their homes or in their family, but this isn't the only reason they're doing it. They've been trying to sell the property for an exorbitant amount adjacent to me for residential, and they haven't been able to sell it. It was rezoned in '94 from agriculture to residential property, and they've been trying to sell it for 20 years. So now they're wanting to have this under a guise of suburban agriculture moved in. The tax burden to me, to the city, $29 an acre. I mean, the county's getting it, but the money they're going to make millions. And over 40 years, the city's going to get $146,000 worth of taxes. I don't know why we're talking about it. I mean, when we need housing. If you want to annex it, let's annex it. I mean, I'd love to have city fire be able to come to my house 3/8 of a mile away from me. I know I'd have to pay more, my tax burden would go up, Dustin's would go up, he would go for that, I'm sure. But the solar farm, this is not a solar farm. They've come here under the guise, it's not farming. You plant a seed, you grow something. Yeah, they're harvesting the sun's energy, but it's no different than a hydroelectric dam. That isn't an industrial facility, hands down. I mean, we heard them build the one over there for 3 months adjacent to us on 125 when thankfully the city had better proceedings and planning. It's been handled a little better, but we would have been at the first meeting had we been notified. But for 3 months, we heard them driving the I-beams in the ground while they were hanging the solar energy. It's not farming. There's nothing. I mean, you can dig a pond and don't make that much racket. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. And other than if we're going to build houses and going to put houses around it, which he said you can do, who's going to want the home there? Who's going to want to buy the houses? Who's going to want to develop the land? I mean, the landowners that, that are selling at the moment, they may be thinking they're planning for the future, but it's going to bring in cheaper housing or subsidized housing. It's not going to be housing that we need that's going to enhance our city. I mean, flat out. That's gosh honest. I mean, so what is a 20-acre array and there's 76 acres left? You're not going, I mean, if you could put a house on a half acre and put 152 houses in there, you're not going to put them there. Nobody's going to want them with a solar farm. Who's going to want the city, in the middle of our city, a solar farm? I agree, annexation would be good. The city needs to grow, but this isn't how we need to grow.
Brian, let me ask you a question. Do you know if farms
I don't. That'd be a question for the, I did know it was the Halls. Dustin, do you know who farms any of it? I don't right now, but it was the Halls, but it's not now currently.
Do you know?
I've met the gentleman, Ms. Norma Boyd introduced us to us. She made sure that our layout wouldn't conflict with his future agricultural operations at the location. And she also negotiated some very significant crop destruction clauses in the contract. So if we're out there inspecting the property and we destroy some corn or some blueberries, we have to pay $1,500 an acre in crop destruction. So she involved her farmer into the planning process. She's also, in her will, left the remaining acres to the farmer to be farmed as long as he's in business. And as soon as he retires, then it's going to St. Jude. So she's provided that the land will be farmed by the farmer. And he's an older gentleman, so it remains to be seen how long he will continue to farm, but she included him in the planning process.
All right, so wait, time out. So you said that once the gentleman, she passes away and the gentleman stops farming, the farm goes to St. Jude?
He will become an administrator. He becomes an administrator for her property.
And the farm will go to St. Jude's too.
So the farm goes to St. Jude. I thought, what would happen to the future, the ability to develop this?
They can develop it as they see fit. The understanding is that they will probably develop those revenues. I mean, the understanding is that as soon as the church has full control of the property, they will maximize the revenue from the property. There's no restrictions on, how the property can be used. It can be passed completely. She just wants to make sure that the farmer can farm as long as he likes.
Thank you, Sean. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am. Just state your name and where you live, please.
Sure. On my earring. I'm Deborah Brooks. My address is 278 Lower Brookfield Road, Tifton, Georgia, 31794. I own property besides Steve off of Carrington Drexler. Owned more before I sold it this year. Had been out there for almost 40 years. Love it. It is not a place for a solar farm. It is beautiful property. I could just go on and on about the environment and the deer and the raccoons and the coyotes and all the nature that comes from town because it kind of runs out of habitat. Beautiful creeks and ponds and streams. It's just a little piece of heaven right outside of the city limits, which is great. It's convenient. A lot of people don't even know we're back there. So I just want to say that I oppose the annexation and rezoning request for Carrington Farms and Norma Boyd. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition to the applications?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Since we did not get to, finish what I have written, can I submit this to council and have them provide that to the,
Absolutely, if you would.
same with my cousin, Mike, I don't think he got finished with all he wanted to say.
Anybody that wants to submit a document, you can do that. If you just identify the document that you want to submit and give it to the clerk, then she'll make that part of the record.
Thank you.
I am Jessie Hawley. I live at 321 Carrington Drexler Road, and I'm just going to speak from a woman's point of view because, I mean, I don't think, I'm just going to be a voice here. But I'm not going to get any technicalities or anything like that, but this is going to be my front yard. This is what I'm going to look at every morning when I wake up and look out the front of my house. This is Dustin's backyard. If any of you lived where we lived at and you woke up every morning and on your way to work or on your way to take your kids to school, is that what you want to see every morning? It's an eyesore. Even the one on 125, I go by there every day taking my little boy to school. It's not kept. It's not kept. It's not like a yard that's been maintained by any means. And where are the trees and shrubs that they guaranteed to put up that they did not do? So there's no guarantee to me that there's going to be a barrier there that's not going to allow me not to see that. I mean, yes, I'm with everybody else about growing into the city. That is fine with me for residential purposes. I'd rather look at a house than I would a solar farm. I just can't fathom going and sitting on a country porch and looking at a solar farm. What kind of sight is that? When now I can go out there, there's cotton rows and peanut rows, and we live in an agricultural environment, and it is beautiful. And that is, just like Dustin said, we moved out there to raise our children. I have 2 small children, and what if they're riding up and down the dirt road and somehow, yes, there's going to be a fence up, but kids are curious. I know there's probably going to be chain link above it or something else. What if my kid gets curious? I have a boy. He's very curious. What if somehow he gets over in there and something happens? I'm just giving a scenario. I don't know that could happen, but I'm totally against it. I just don't want to see that in my front yard. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Can I clarify one thing, because you're talking about Dustin's backyard? Is it the Boyd property or is it the Carrington? I know where you live, doesn't it? Isn't behind you
It is the Carrington property.
It's the
I
Carrington?
know we're not, and Boyd property is only a half a mile down the road from us.
Okay, but
So,
you're looking out your front door at what would have been
the Carrington property, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition to the applications? Just state your name and address, please, ma'am.
Yes. Sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Kayla Griffin, and I reside at 4165 Georgia Highway 125 North. I am the wife of Dustin Griffin. We have resided there for 3 years now, since August, and I would just like to state for the record and for my minutes that I am totally against the annexation for the solar farm. As my husband mentioned, we do have a 2-year-old and a 12-year-old, and that is the future of my children, and I would not like the solar farm there. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition to this application or these applications? Mayor, there being no further comment, I ask the public hearing be closed.
Before we move on to the special call meeting and approval of the agenda, at what point will we be able to ask questions? Will it be once we open the special call meeting?
Yes, and then we
Okay.
can, we'll, can certainly have discussions. If somebody wants to make a motion in a second, then we can discuss it.
Okay.
I'm sure that, if council has some questions, sometimes that's difficult to do, without a pending motion. But I think that if, some issues have come up during the public hearing, can I just ask if there's anyone else has any additional comments? I think some things may have been addressed that may be able to be answered by Crystal, if that's appropriate. I mean, I think that may not be the time to, during the discussions. But I mean, we can do it either way. We can either go ahead and go into the meeting, we'll need a motion and a second, and then we can then make discussions, if you like to do it that way.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and go into the meeting? Let's approve the agenda with the removal of item 3 and 4 on the agenda for the special called meeting. That's relating to the Carrington property, correct? Okay,
Yes.
I'll make sure I got the Carrington Farm. Make sure I've got that correct. So, what I'd like to do, Rob, if it's okay with you, is let's go into the meeting, approve the agenda with those 2 items removed, and let us discuss amongst ourselves and ask questions if that would be appropriate without a because I think through that discussion, we'll begin to formulate what our final decision will be, if everybody is agreeable with that, and if that doesn't violate any protocol or anything for you.
I don't think it would, Mayor. I
Okay.
understand that, you know,
Okay.
there's some issues that need to be addressed before
Right.
someone wants to try to attempt to make a motion on
Exactly,
the topic.
exactly. Okay, so we will call to order the public hearing is now closed. We will call to order our special called meeting. And at this point, if I can talk, at this point, I will take a motion regarding the agenda with the removal of those 2 items.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the approval of the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed? And to let the public know, Councilman M.J. Hall, that you just heard, is actually out of town, so he's calling in this evening. So we have M.J. on the phone. And M.J., you can hear us okay? You've had no issue with the audio?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, since we've had the public hearing, is there anyone who would like to make any public comments to the council? I would assume that you've made your comments already in the public hearing.
I would love the opportunity to respond to some of the comments that were made if there's an opportunity to do so.
I don't think that would be appropriate. Okay, would there be any other public comments that didn't come to speak at the public hearing? Okay. All right, let's open the floor for discussion on the Boyd property. I've got some questions. Crystal, on the solar farm that's on Highway 125 that was referenced, I know that that's outside the city limits. Were the same restrictions with regard to buffers and fencing and maintenance?
So that is in the county, and it's considered a permissible use in the county. So they didn't go through conditional zoning, so they didn't have the opportunity to place conditions on this development. And also, they don't have a zoning ordinance, and I do believe that they're in the process of going through that. But at the time, it was just a permissible use, so that's just going to the community development office and getting a permit. You know, they didn't have to go through the county commission or anything like that.
Okay, so there was...
What is that zone? You know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, and then I know that this same process was everyone went through the same process with the county and the county planning and zoning. And I know you've met with Chris at their community development planning and zoning office. Was there opposition at the county meeting as well? I'm just not familiar with how that was handled.
I'm not sure. I've checked the minutes for the county when these came up for rezoning there. So they needed to rezone from county R1 to, I'm not sure they're equivalent to ours, but ours is, you know, suburban agriculture is what's allowable, but theirs is some form of agriculture, but they needed to rezone from R1 to that zoning classification. So it did go before their planning and zoning commission and the county commission, but I've checked through the minutes and I couldn't find where anyone signed up in opposition to the applications from the county.
All right, for those of you that are here this evening, just a show of hands, since we don't have any record of what was said in the minutes of the county meetings, did you all go and speak in opposition at the county meetings? You were not notified? Okay, wow. Sure.
I did have a chance, and this is one of the things around the postings that went up. So they absolutely were posted. I think we all could be in agreement that there were some postings put up. So
I believe that, I think he may have discussed it with us the first time they presented it, that it was going to create an island, and that's why the county declined to give them
Okay.
I think that their issue there, I think, was spot zoning.
spot zoning. yeah.
Okay, all right, in our protocol, go over our protocol, so if someone comes in and says, I want to annex and rezone, they are to notify the property owners so that they're aware of what is coming up for discussion.
That's right. In the past, our protocols were that the burden was on the applicant. So
Okay.
under our ordinances, we have to notify the public in 2 ways. And we satisfy that by placing a notice to public sign on the property saying what is going on, when the meeting is, where you can find out more information, and then we publish in our legal organ, our newspaper. Those are our 2 ways of satisfying it. The third is above and beyond. So the first planning and zoning hearing, the burden was placed on the applicant to send out notices, and the applicant did, sign to that application saying that those notices were mailed out and who they were mailed to and where they were mailed to. I didn't have a good feeling though at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the first one when nobody showed up. It was a little strange to me. So I just said, you know what, for the next one, we'll go ahead and send out the notices. We're gonna really make sure that the public is notified, that there are proposed zoning and
Thank you for doing,
annexation.
otherwise we would not have known, so.
So we sent out the
But
notices.
legally, but let me clarify. Legally, we did not have to send out these notices.
That was on that was the responsibility of the applicant per our ordinance.
But that's over and above.
We satisfy our requirements by posting on the property and posting in the legal organ.
And legally, that's all that has to be done, Rob?
That's right. What had basically transpired is that after the initial application, we determined that there were errors and some omissions, so we required, an amended application. And when Beltline amended their application, we took it upon ourselves to make the mailings, to make sure that they did get mailed and folks did have notice. Now, it's not, we satisfied our legal requirements by posting and putting it in the paper. But again, we took it upon ourselves to make sure that we sent the letters out so everybody would have notice.
I'll say this, with all due respect, I don't think we should set that precedent.
I mean, either we have to, either we cover it with the first 2 or we don't.
Well, but the problem is, I think we have, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that we have an obligation to notify when a business signs off, an applicant signs off and says that they have done it, and they did not. Can you imagine if we were in here?
Well, no, I don't
So
disagree
that's
with
my
that.
concern.
But when I hear we've gone above and beyond, so either we're gonna do it or we're not.
Well,
We can't pick
I
and
think-
choose at this time we're gonna send letters.
then I'm gonna make a motion
You know.
that we do that with every application,
And
that the city
yeah,
follows up, that's
but,
fine. But,
to Wes's point, we don't, either we do it,
Mhm.
and if legally, we don't have to, but we decide in the interest of being transparent, and maybe people don't see the signs out there.
You don't,
you know,
they're this small
and
print,
that
you
kind of
don't, I mean,
But-
with, between political signs and
No,
we
I-
buy ugly houses signs and,
I agree, but be
it's
that as it
hard.
may, because there's been discussion about, well, at the first meeting, they didn't get notified. Well, and so we shouldn't even be here. Well, the reality is, we had another meeting where everybody was notified, so you can call the first meeting moot, didn't matter, done, no action was taken on our part. Now, we've had another one, which they were notified, and everybody came. So,
Well, this is
from a
my.
legal standpoint, we're okay.
Okay, but this is my concern. I've heard several people say there's no issue with annexation, but there is issue with this application for the rezoning with this particular use. And it's also my understanding that there have been a lot of errors in this application process. Is that a fair way to say that, Rob?
I think so.
Okay. I'm very concerned doing business in the city of Tifton with an applicant of this quality.
But Mayor, I might
And,
add, I mean, where we are as a procedural standpoint
Right.
today on Boyd, I think we've dotted our i's and crossed our t's.
I know we have. But my concern is, and I think it's a very valid point that was made by one of the speakers this evening, what's the burden, where does the burden go to make sure that the applicant does what the applicant is supposed to do? And that's a great concern of mine. And I'll just speak. Y'all know me, I speak. Rob, if I'm out of turn, just stop me, and I'll stop. My recommendation is that we postpone any decision. I would like to go back to the Boyd family and say, resubmit your application for annexation if you're okay with that. And I'm very uncomfortable with the solar farm aspect of this. So I don't know I don't know if we can approve annexation this evening, but not approve the zoning. I would defer that to you. That's what my gut is telling me. I do agree that we need, there's no question that the opportunity for proper growth and development on this tract is the sky's the limit. But I'm afraid that we will lock ourselves into something that we will be stuck with that will limit that. So annexation, I have no issue with. I think it's a great plan for annexation, and going back to our comprehensive plan, which we are charged with following, which indicates that residential development and growth is what the community helps put that comprehensive plan together, and then it's approved by our regional commission and various other organizations within the state. So the annexation part I have no problem with. The solar farm part I have a significant amount of heartburn about, so I don't know how to, is there a way to separate? I mean, obviously we're separate, they're individual items on our agenda, but how do we do that if that's?
But the question is, Mayor, if, you know, the landowner, can we annex without, you know, and say, okay, it's gotta all be residential and not a solar farm? I don't know the answer. I can guess what the answer would probably be. And is that optimum to annex the 96, 97, and 20 of it's gonna be this solar farm?
Well, and that's why I almost wish that we could send this back to the family and say, you know, if you are, you know, but I don't know, I'm just trying to.
I think the annexation into the city of Tifton is contingent upon allowing for the use. I don't think they're going to be annexing in because they want to be inside the city of Tifton. I think the city of Tifton grants them this zoning ability, their conditional zoning, and they're able to profit
Move
off
forward.
the Beltline project as well. You know, that's the only way that this project's getting off the ground. So if we're denying their use, I'm pretty sure she's going to withdraw her application to annex inside the city of Tifton.
And does that outweigh in solar farm and done properly? And I think that's an issue there. You know, we would have to, you know, what are our remedies? And that's where we look to Pete and Rob and Crystal and say, oh, here's what we said. Here's what's going to be done around it. And if it's not, we got to be clear day one or day two or whenever it happens that it's not covered. But do we forego 70 acres, which is potentially 140, 150 houses, where we want to be going, and the ability then to go on to Brighton Road, and we give up this 20 acres for this solar farm?
I'm willing to delay that to get a better plan to be brought to the council, because if the consensus is amongst the property owners that we're okay with, or, you know, in the neighboring, we're okay with annexation, we just don't want this particular use. We're okay if you're.
Well, I'm not sure I heard exactly that we're okay with annexation, because you're not going to look out your front door and see
several people.
You're not going to see you know, a lot of trees. You're not going to see things growing and all that kind of stuff. You know, you're going to be in the city and it's going to be houses and residential. That group moved there because it wasn't in the city and it wasn't residential. And,
you've got your hand up, sir.
We can remand it back to them.
Sir, go ahead. I'd like to.
I had this in what I was going to say, but I have been in law enforcement for 41 years, and I've got a pretty good nose when it comes to things that stink. And this whole process smells. Not only there were two previous zoning meetings, if I'm correct, Crystal. We showed up at the third. Is that correct?
For the city or the county?
You showed up at the second planning and zoning meeting.
Okay. So we weren't notified in lieu of what was agreed to by the developer. The signage on there was inaccurate. In that meeting, the representative from Beltline told the zoning commission that, yes, I did send out those letters.
Okay, well, and,
He did not.
okay.
That stinks.
well, and we know that now. We know that, so
And he
I understand.
also stated and contradicted himself in the property values of how they're going to increase or decrease.
Okay.
I still don't know the answer
Okay,
to that question.
all right, let's, hold, okay, let's time out. Yes, sir.
Well, so, I want to step back and just say, I was talking outside footage when this issue about notification popped up in the last planning zone hearing. And we haven't audited how that occurred or where the disconnect was, but I can say with certainty that Mr. Wilmot, Mr. Gilliard, they stopped the original application process because there was a handful of things that they felt had changed and that when we were making conditions, including some acreage and stuff, so it needed to be re-advertised. So if there were mistakes made in the first application, I'm happy to fall on my sword if that's the appropriate thing to do. We have to audit and figure out exactly what happened, but unequivocally, this resubmission was advertised appropriately, letters went out, advertisements in the papers were made, and it was done by the book, and then subsequently scrubbed by the county with the P&Z director for the county, and the numbers reconciled. So if errors were made, be the first one in this room to fall on my sword. All I can say on the resubmission, that everything was corrected and it was done under extreme scrutiny and in collaboration with the city attorney and the planning zone director.
Crystal, there were only 3 members of the city planning and zoning in that meeting. That was a quorum?
It was
Okay,
3 of the 5.
okay. Yes, sir, very quickly.
He would have records of where we signed for a certified letter, and, I mean, it did, I had to sign.
Yeah, yeah, we know that they did.
The second thing, when we were at the second P&Z meeting, we didn't show up at first, because we hadn't had a clue it was even occurring, but we felt like, as not being citizens of the city, living in the county, our word really didn't matter. I mean, I asked that question, what would we have to say here to have that chat, to, get your attention or your view, and it was like, since they put so much effort in the first meeting that we were unable to attend, that they were so proud of the project, that they put forth in stipulations and guidelines that they set forward.
Okay.
Nothing that we said that night
Okay.
mattered at the second.
Well, I do,
Everybody, all 14 of us that showed up, or all 14 letters went out, we all felt that way after the meeting, we all talked about it.
I-
I'm glad I asked them, and they wouldn't even reply as to what we would do.
okay,
And ultimately, it was your decision, they were just
right.
rubber stamping that he had crossed his i's and dotted his
Okay.
t's.
Well, I will say, we do represent city residents only. Our no authority, we don't have any authority, but our jurisdiction ends at those city limit lines. Is it appropriate to send this back to planning and zoning? Because I really have issue with the solar farm aspect of it.
That certainly is an option, to remand it back to planning and zoning for consideration of additional conditions.
Well, I don't know that I could even approve the solar, and I'm just one vote, so it may, it's up to the council to decide, but my concern is the solar farm aspect.
Well, if you remanded it back to planning and zoning, then they can take up the issue as to whether or not they still recommend moving forward with the solar farm, or if they recommend that perhaps they recommend annexation, but a different use. So that certainly is an option, under
All
our
right,
ordinances.
I've asked lots of questions, I'm gonna stop now and let
I
you.
guess, and I've heard, who's gonna live next to a solar farm? Well, that's not my first choice, but when I look at Georgia Power and these transmission lines that they expand, and you go out Carpenter Road, people build houses underneath those. I mean, we've got people that live there, and you can hear the buzz. I mean, it is so loud. In fact, maybe you showed us a house several years ago, and we heard it from, it was this buzz. So, yes, there's lots of subdivisions under power lines, within power lines. So, honestly, if we enforce what we put there to surround this solar farm, you won't see it. It will not be seen. We just have to make sure that we enforce the guidelines that we put. But to give up potential 140 house sites and
I don't
annexing
think
up to,
I
to
don't think
Brighton
we'd be
Road.
giving those up. I think to remand it back and then,
I don't, well,
that's just.
she might not, but I doubt seriously they're gonna all of a sudden say, I'm gonna come into the city and build houses.
Mr. Drexler, you had a comment?
There is no intent by either owner of those properties to put houses on them. You bet.
Okay, thank you. Quickly, yes. And normally we don't allow this much.
We don't do that.
I know, but I feel it's very important for everyone to be heard this evening, so.
I'm grateful that you've allowed me that as well. Now, this may not mean anything to any of you in this room. I lived in Louisiana twice. And I moved there from Georgia, grew up here. Driving down the road, beautiful, beautiful, to Mr. Falk's point here. Pasture land with cows. All of a sudden, there's this awkward drill, oil. I've lived in Alaska, come through California, I've lived in northern New York. Very unusual wind farms, and yes, they're called farms, because they're producing something. Unusual in the middle of these pastures.
Okay.
And to your point again, when we moved back here, we had to live in front of a substation that was the most horrible looking creation I've ever seen. But it was necessary for each and every one of us in this room for the production of energy. Now, going back to my point earlier, this was not a decision made lightly, and it was not made as we woke up one morning. The research has been done, the questions have been answered.
Okay. Let me.
To our satisfaction.
Okay, let me.
Solar energy is a viable.
Okay. Okay, let's, I'm gonna cut off all the discussion. I think, we've given.
And it is our property.
Okay, I got it. I think we've given everyone ample opportunity to speak, and I appreciate you being respectful and cordial to each other in your comments and in addressing the council. I think we'll cut off any further public comment and just offer any discussion or communication here amongst the council. Any other questions?
I just think that it's, you have every single resident that lives on Carrington or connected to one of these properties here speaking in opposition. That says a lot to that property or to that thing. I think a lot of these guys, especially Dustin's comments, were proved to be good. I think Brandon's comments about farming and whatnot was good comments. You know, I am of the opinion that we would deny the application as presented instead of postponing anything or going back to anybody and just deny that. And I would be willing to make that motion right now.
Okay, let me make sure that I am clear. Rob, you know how, make sure we follow protocol. If the motion is denied for annexation, the motion is, obviously if we don't annex, we're not gonna rezone. But those two are linked together, they cannot be separated.
I would say that would be the case. I
Okay.
think that the annexation was basically applied for with the idea that they were going to be able to develop it as a solar farm. So I would not think that you could appropriately annex the property without also considering what their proposed use of that property.
Okay, so that everybody's clear. Does everybody understand? I wanna make sure we understand what we're either going to be approving or denying. So everybody's got that. MJ, does that make sense to you? Do you understand what the motion is?
To deny as presented.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, I cannot make a motion, but I can second a motion. I'm sorry, y'all. Are you gonna be able to vote?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second to deny the application as presented. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I mean, And Wes, I appreciate your comment, and I appreciate, you know, everyone, you know, coming, and yes, they are not residents of the city of Tifton. And so, we'd love to annex any of you in. I'm not sure whether there's anything between you and the city, if you're right on the city limits, but, I still maintain, and even though we've heard they're not gonna build houses, well, you know, maybe not. But for the city, and what's best for the city to be able to annex property all the way up to Brighton Road is an opportunity. What do we give up? 20-acre solar farm that's gonna be surrounded that you won't be able to see, or we'll take legal action against them. And I think we're always looking for annexation issues. Nobody wants to annex because their taxes are gonna go up. Well, I've heard that enough to, you know, where I wanna spit, but.
Well, it doesn't preclude the Boyd family from coming back with annexation, just as long as this particular use
One thing
is.
it does is deny this particular application. It does not deny Ms. Boyd ever going back and reapplying to annex inside the city of Tifton.
Or any of the neighboring property owners, for that matter.
That I realize,
Yeah.
but, you know, I don't know that this, I think it's a risk. I think it's a risk, and the risk with the solar farm is less than the risk that we won't be able to annex all the way up there. I'd be curious, I know, in the discussion, can Pete make a comment about it?
Absolutely, yes,
Well,
I value Pete's opinion.
I will say, Jack, I will say that there's no guarantee that real estate will ever be developed there either.
This is true.
Well, that's the intent. There's no guarantee. So, no matter what, if you were to be able to annex this whole property at the end of the day, all right, the farming of that property employs, which people spend money outside the city of Tifton. They buy equipment or whatever, fuel, whatnot, that does business with people that operate in the city of Tifton or Tift County. You know, so the non-employment issue, that played a role in my thought process. After the solar farm is created and used, and then the warranties or whatnot roll off or come off, that worries me, because out of sight, out of mind, you know. Now, these folks are gonna have to look at that every day, not anyone associated with the revenue producing of the solar farm itself. So that played a role in my decision making. So, you know, there's no guarantee, just because you annex that and you're getting closer to 82, or not 82, excuse me, Brighton Road, does that guarantee that houses are gonna be built and we're gonna be able to annex all these properties?
No,
But it doesn't also, if Ms. Boyd wants to do that, there's nothing that says that she could not come back with a new application to come and present and say, hey, I want to come inside the city of Tifton.
Can I just make sure I point one thing out, is that if the application to rezone or annex is denied, they cannot reapply for 6 months.
Okay.
But
For this particular use, though.
For that particular tax ID parcel number and owner.
So you're telling me that the parcel cannot come back up
For consideration under another use.
After 6 months after denial, you know, if you deny a rezone, then you cannot bring another application for 6 months on that property ID number or owner. I just want to let you know that
Sure,
that's
thank you,
there.
yes, that's important
I
information.
mean, I'm okay with
But
that.
let's also, you know, there on Murray, where Murray's, that was Carrington property that was sold, and houses are going up. This is on the other side, you know, hopefully would continue. So to say that they're not gonna build houses, well, when there's an area there, they sold, been in their family for years and sold it, and
Well, that development,
you know, and houses are being built. But I think let's distinguish between Carrington, where I think the bulk of the people here, that's in their backyard, the Carrington property. The Boyd property over next to the interstate, and maybe they're within, I think somebody said a half a mile. So let's don't confuse the two, that the Carrington that we're not even talking about, which is in the backyard and front yard of this group that's come. So Pete, I mean, can we get?
Yeah, just a couple things, Mayor and Council. I mean, I understand this is a tough spot, and you know, heard from 16 property owners that surround that, but then a property owner saying this is my property, and the Boyds obviously have given their consent for this to go forward. So, you know, looking at the future, it's very hard to understand and conceptualize 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and that state legislature who indicated that there was going to be 6 exits in the city of Tifton really knew what they were doing. And here you have the opportunity to say, well, in 20 years or in 25 years, whoever made that decision to go up to Brighton Road, that was a pretty consistent move with land, and because they don't make land anymore, obviously, and we have to strategically, everything we do is strategic, and no one likes the growth, for sure. But that's why I would really try and encourage you to go back to P&Z. I'm interested in the warranty work. That was an important component. You know, again, the Boyd property is off to the left. This is not the Carrington, so the industrial facility, et cetera, et cetera. You know, obviously we could probably look at the buffer, but then you know, really carving out who is responsible if something fails. If something happens, who is responsible? And obviously, I don't think that'd be on our backs.
Well,
That
you
would
know,
be on the contract.
and I know that the wheels of government turn very slowly for a purpose, sometimes frustratingly slowly. Remanding it by denying it, and in essence, if the family wants to move forward with anything, it would have to go back to P&Z. It would take 6 months probably to bring it back forward if everything's done properly and according to the protocols and that kind of thing.
Mayor,
So-
I might add, if you remand it back, it is supposed to go before them at their next meeting,
Okay.
according to our.
But what we're talking about is just denying it at this point. I don't, the motion is not to remand it back.
I understand.
I would like to remand it back, but I don't think I've got the council support.
but under-
I'd be in agreement to remand it back to their meeting if we can get these questions that have come up, whether it be warranty, of course. I mean, there's warranty, and you know, things run out of warranty. I'm not a solar expert. I've sold solar aluminum before, but things were repaired. But if we need to clarify who takes care of it, what's the responsibility of belt line, what's the responsibility of duty, who takes care of what? For these very good points that have come up. Let's get it back to P&Z, answer those questions, and Pete and Crystal have them all, and then have it come back to us. I just don't want to.
Well, okay, I mean, that's what I would prefer to do. I can't in good
And
conscience.
I would agree with you to do that, and let it come back, and then we either, we vote in favor, or deny it. So, but I'm gonna deny it
Did you second
tonight.
my motion?
I did.
So there's a motion on the table.
Yeah, there's a motion that's
Well, I
been
realize
made and
I
seconded,
realize you got a motion
so
on
help
the
me
table.
out, Mr. City Attorney, what,
So
can we
basically-
just withdraw those?
No,
motions?
if if you're really looking to do considering remanding it back to P&Z, and you have a motion to deny on the table that's been seconded, then you can vote, to deny that motion, and then have somebody, make a motion to
Okay.
remand.
Okay, are y'all clear with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, MJ, does that make sense?
Can Rob say that again?
Yeah, basically, there's
I can see
a
y'all
motion
now.
and a second to deny the application on the table. But after discussing that motion, it seems to be the desire of the council to remand this back to the Plan and Zoning Commission. So since we had the motion to deny on the table, in order to remand it back, that motion should be voted against, and then somebody can make a motion to remand it to Plan and Zoning.
And you can do that. Okay.
So,
Okay.
Okay, so, all right,
So, wait a minute, but you could do this, Rob, right? So he could amend, since we got a first and second, he could then.
somebody could make a motion to amend the main motion to remand it back to Plan and Zoning.
I'll
Okay,
make
so-
that motion.
Okay. All right.
Which nullifies
Still
Wes's
going through all
motion.
that voting process.
There you go. Okay, that's better. Okay, so we have a motion to remand it back to P and Z, and you've got the list of questions, Crystal, and you'll get with Pete and Rob and planning and zoning to address these concerns. And now, will these folks be able to be notified of that? Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second to remand it back to planning and zoning?
Second.
Thank you, Johnny. All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
He's gonna go out with a bang.
Well, that's okay. No, I get it.
I'm with you, Wes.
I'm just very concerned about the Beltline aspect of it. That's the part that has given me some real heartburn.
Oh, get these answers. Get these answers.
Yes, let's get these answers.
Mayor, for the audience, do you want to, Rob, spell that out for everyone here so that everyone is clear before they leave what we're doing?
I think that would be very beneficial. Thank you, Rob. Yes, please.
Listen, I appreciate everybody coming and voice your opinions. Basically, what the city council has done is made a motion to remand this back to planning and zoning commission. Planning and zoning commission can then have another meeting, take into consideration what city council has discussed tonight, and then make any recommendations that may come out of that meeting. It could be to, move forward with it or make different recommendations.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Why was Carrington brought up as on that?
Well, there were some issues that came up about whether or not the annexation of the Carrington property may create an unincorporated island. And, we're looking into that, and I think Beltline wanted to give us some additional submissions to determine whether or not it did create an unincorporated island. I'm gonna take a look at that, take a look at their take a look at what they proposed. And then of course that would, again, go forward with planning and zoning. And they will have a meeting, we'll all get notified about that Carrington property. But there was an issue, it's a legal issue, whether or not it does or it doesn't, it's kind of up in the air. It's something I'm looking at, but that's why I didn't go forward. There's some issues that came up that has to be determined from a legal standpoint.
All of us, I think,
Yeah, I understand. And, I think those issues came up, pretty much late last week. So we thought the better practice would be to make sure that we go forward, so we've got the ducks in a row, and we're all on legal grounds. If it goes forward, it goes forward. Again, then y'all can, come to voice your opinion at P and Z should you, should the application be renewed for that meeting. Yes, ma'am.
So if planning and zoning says, okay, we're gonna move forward again, it comes back here?
Yeah. We have to have a public hearing. And so it was scheduled for tonight, but again, Georgia law requires a public hearing to give you all an opportunity. Actually, the public hearing that comes before city council is what's required by law. What you have at planning and zoning is not necessarily required by law, but we invite everybody to come to planning and zoning because
We
we
need to go into
want to hear it.
executive session.
So the planning and zoning
Can
can
y'all
take
stay
into
for
consideration
to
what
go
you
over
say.
his contract?
Because when they make, because the planning and zoning is a recommending body to the city council. So a lot of stuff that they do, and they recommend,
We
the
need to
city
go into
council take
executive
that into
session.
consideration. So it's a good process. And we really do want to hear from the public because it does change, what city council thinks, what planning and zoning thinks, and we can kind of, act accordingly.
Did you hear me?
So again, I appreciate y'all coming. You will be notified about anything that comes, comes forward, okay? Yes.
Sean, would it be possible to kind of hear an idea of what that schedule looks like for the P and Z hearing?
It's, according to our order, it's supposed to be the next scheduled meeting, and I'm not sure when that is. You just get with Crystal Ryan, she'll let you know. Okay?
So it doesn't have to be re-advertised, it just goes to the next hearing? Like you don't have like a 15-day advertisement period, or does it just go to the next regularly scheduled hearing?
It goes to their next meeting. That's what's required.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Rob, for explaining that. I think that was very helpful. That's all that we have on our agenda to discuss this evening. We do need to go into a quick executive session for personnel reasons, so I will need a motion from the council concerning going into executive session. We'll take about a 2-second break and then conclude our meeting in executive session. Can you make a motion, please? Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, all right. The meeting is adjourned, and we We appreciate everyone being here this evening.